In this next unscripted live topology tool video, we're going to be looking at the merge tool, which the most powerful feature of the merge tool is that it can be used as a full screen brush style tool. So I'm just going to create a new really large terrain so we can get some big brushes on it. And I'm going to put a basic gradient. So I've got a basic rough shape for the base of where I'm going to be pasting all my brushes. This will be like our grassy area. Now the thing that you want to do is you want to do an altitude bottom on this so that the height map that I'm working at is at the lowest possible elevation. That gives me more elevation range for the brushes that I'm pasting in. So now we'll choose our topology tools, go to merge, which merges a file with the height map. And what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be using brush mode. So I can now load in this brush mountain that I've got. And there's my gizmos showing the selection region and the terrain brush gizmo. I can now move those around. And what I want to do on the blending is I want to choose brush blend. I can rotate, do whatever I want to do to the brush. When I get it to where I want, I click on paste and it'll paste that brush in for me. I can move it to another new location, that same brush, rotate it and paste it in again. And I can keep going around the terrain and keep pasting that same brush in anywhere that I want. Or I can, of course, clear that and load in a second brush. Here's our second brush that we've got loaded. Now I move it to the locations that I want to have. It positioned out, rotate it around. Make sure I'm on brush blend. Paste it in. And I can build an entire height map of alpha brushes all created within the main editor viewport of all these alpha brushes to create a final terrain that I want to have for the terrain to look at. Whatever I want to have for my final terrain layout. If you actually go into the materials as well and choose the texture material, you can actually load a overview if you've got a layout that you want for your mountains and for your terrain. You can use the texture material type to load an external texture in to be able to have a layout guide for putting all of your brushes into the terrain. We'll put these to a more reasonable elevation range so they look a little more natural. So there's our brushes pasted in using the merge tool. And the merge will work with other files as well. It doesn't have to be alpha brushes. It works with any type of terrain height map chunk that you've got, any file that's smaller than your base terrain that you've got here. Any smaller file can be imported in and pasted. And of course here in the preview I can see a preview of the brush that I'm working at. And this gives me information on it, tells me it's a 2048 by 2048 brush. If I actually bring in a tile that's not a brush, you can see I now have a tile that I've brought in. And what I would want to do with that is not use the brush blend. I would want to use something like the circle blend to blend that in. That looks kind of sketchy, doesn't it? How about if we use a blend mask file? I'll use a blend mask file with that. I'll choose the external mask blob, and we'll paste with that. That looks a little bit better. So you can get all kinds of really funky, weird layouts and shapes and designs. Alpha brushes work the best with this, of course. That brush that I chose there isn't a very good tile. Let's try a different tile here and see what it looks like. I'll go with a really smooth rectangle on it, and we'll see what that pastes like. Oh, that didn't do a good blend. Hit the undo if you don't get a good blend. The blend percent needs to be cranked up on that. That's interesting. Oh, it's got a defect in it. I didn't have it smooth enough on the blend percent, was still too big. When you're dealing with pasting in the gizmo, the terrain gizmo brush, when you paste it in with your different blend modes, what the blend percent does is you can see it changes the size of the area that's pasted. Where there's white, that's where the brush will be rendered. Where there's black and gradient, that's where it will be blended with the existing main terrain. And the smooth is the amount of blurring that it puts on the edge for the circle gradient and the rectangle gradient. You can see here I can change the amount of blending for the smoothing blur around the edge of it. So if I go back to my circle gradient, and if we undo that one, which didn't paste well, it's got a seam on it. If I bring this back in and paste it with a higher blend percent, it should get rid of that edge. There we go. Now I have no edge around it. Anyway, this is what the merge topology tool does. Enjoy.